A retail worker, Karen, laughed at Judge Judy's warning, but 47 seconds later she was begging for mercy. What you're about to witness isn't just another courtroom meltdown. It's the moment when decades of entitlement collided with unstoppable justice, and the aftermath shocked millions of viewers worldwide. But here's what nobody knew until the camera stopped rolling. This wasn't Karen's first time terrorizing customers, and Judge Judy had been waiting years for this exact moment to destroy her completely. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The courtroom was electric that Tuesday morning, the kind of tension that makes your skin crawl and your heart race. Judge Judy's legendary set, with its polished wood panels and intimidating bench, had seen thousands of cases, but veteran producers later admitted they'd never felt an atmosphere quite like this one. The gallery was packed beyond capacity, every seat filled with spectators who somehow sensed they were about to witness television history. Camera operators adjusted their lenses, knowing instinctively that whatever unfolded in the next 30 minutes would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform on Earth. At the defendant's table sat Sandra Mitchell, though the internet would forever know her by a different name. At 47 years old, Sandra was the embodiment of retail entitlement, a woman who had spent 2 decades climbing the corporate ladder at major department stores, wielding her manager's badge like a weapon against anyone she deemed beneath her station. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that signature Karen cut, sharp and severe, framing a face that had perfected the art of condescending smirks. She wore a navy blue blazer that screamed middle management authority, her manicured nails drumming impatiently on the table as she surveyed the courtroom with the confidence of someone who had never truly faced consequences for her actions. But Sandra had no idea what was coming. Hidden in Judge Judy's case files were 17 separate complaints spanning 5 different stores, a pattern of discrimination and abuse that painted a picture so disturbing it would make national headlines within hours. Security footage from 4 separate incidents sat ready to be played, each one more damaging than the last. Corporate emails discussing Sandra's behavior, witness statements from traumatized employees, and a smoking gun piece of evidence that would obliterate any sympathy the audience might have had for her. Across the courtroom sat Marcus Washington, a 34-year-old father of 3, whose only crime had been trying to return a defective laptop for his daughter's college coursework. What should have been a simple 5-minute transaction had escalated into a 2-hour nightmare that left Marcus humiliated, his children in tears and store security footage capturing every moment of Sandra's shocking behavior. But Marcus wasn't just any customer. He was a decorated veteran, a community volunteer, and a man whose quiet dignity would soon make Sandra's cruelty appear even more monstrous. Judge Judy entered with her trademark authority, her silver hair perfectly styled, her black robes flowing behind her like a cape of justice. At 81 years old, she had seen every type of liar, every brand of entitlement, every flavor of human cruelty that could walk through her courtroom doors. But her research team had briefed her thoroughly on Sandra Mitchell's history, and those who knew Judge Judy best would later say they'd never seen that particular glint in her eyes before. It was the look of a predator who had finally cornered her prey after a long, patient hunt. The audience leaned forward as Judge Judy took her seat, the weight of anticipation pressing down on everyone present. Social media was already buzzing with pre-show speculation, hashtags like Judge Judy's Karen and retail justice trending before the case had even begun. But nobody, not the producers, not the audience, not even Marcus Washington himself, knew about the secret weapon Judge Judy had prepared, a piece of evidence so devastating, so perfectly timed, that it would turn Sandra's world upside down in less than a minute. Sandra adjusted her blazer and checked her phone one last time. Completely oblivious to the storm that was about to engulf her, she had walked into that courtroom believing she could charm her way out of trouble, convince America that she was the real victim, and return to her life of retail tyranny without missing a beat. Her confidence was absolute, her smugness palpable, her belief in her own invincibility about to be shattered in the most public way imaginable. The cameras rolled, the red recording lights blinked on, and Judge Judy's voice cut through the silence with surgical precision. But what happened in those first moments was just the calm before the hurricane, because in exactly 47 seconds, Sandra Mitchell would discover that karma doesn't just knock politely. Sometimes it kicks down the door, brings receipts, and destroys everything you thought you knew about getting away with being terrible to other human beings. If you want to see how this explosive confrontation unfolds, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what Judge Judy does next will absolutely blow your mind, and trust me, you do not want to miss the moment when Karen realizes she's about to become the most hated person on the internet. Judge Judy's gavel struck the bench with the finality of a gunshot, and the courtroom fell into that familiar hush that preceded legal warfare. Her steel gray eyes swept across the room before settling on the case file, thick with evidence that would soon turn Sandra Mitchell's world into a burning wasteland of consequences. "We're here today," Judge Judy began, her voice carrying that unmistakable authority that had made her a household name, "because Ms. Mitchell believes she has the right to treat paying customers like garbage. And Mr. Washington believes he deserves basic human dignity. Let's see who's right." The case seemed simple enough on the surface. Marcus Washington had purchased a $1,200 laptop from Tech World Electronics for his 18-year-old daughter Jasmine, who was starting her freshman year at Howard University. The laptop had arrived with a cracked screen and a faulty keyboard, clearly damaged during shipping. Marcus had driven 45 minutes to the store with his receipt, the original packaging, and his 3 children in tow, expecting a routine exchange that would take 15 minutes at most. What he got instead was Sandra Mitchell on her worst day, wielding her manager's authority like a sledgehammer against anyone who dared to inconvenience her. "Your Honor," Marcus began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of genuine hurt. "I just wanted to return a broken computer. I had my receipt, the original box, everything was exactly as it should be. But Ms. Mitchell treated me and my children like we were criminals trying to scam the store. She accused me of damaging the laptop myself, said people like me always try to game the system, and when I asked to speak to someone else, she called security and had us escorted out like we were shoplifters," the gallery murmured, already sensing the direction this case was heading. But Sandra Mitchell sat unmoved, her expression fixed in that practiced retail manager mask of professional indignation. She had perfected this look over 2 decades of customer service, the one that said she was the reasonable party dealing with unreasonable people. Her manicured fingers tapped against her leather portfolio, and she actually rolled her eyes when Marcus mentioned being treated like criminals. Judge Judy's eyebrows arched dangerously. "Ms. Mitchell, is Mr. Washington's account accurate?" Sandra leaned forward with the confidence of someone who had talked her way out of customer complaints for 20 years. "Your Honor, with all due respect, Mr. Washington is leaving out crucial details. The laptop he brought in was clearly damaged by user error, not shipping issues. The screen had fingerprints all over it. The keyboard showed signs of liquid damage, and frankly, his attitude from the moment he walked in was hostile and demanding. I followed company policy to the letter, and when he became belligerent, I had no choice but to involve security for the safety of my staff and other customers." The lies rolled off Sandra's tongue with practiced ease, each word carefully chosen to paint herself as the professional victim of an aggressive customer. She had used this exact script dozens of times before, always successfully. Her voice carried that condescending tone that retail managers perfect over years of dealing with what they consider inferior beings. But what Sandra didn't know was that Judge Judy had already reviewed the security footage, and every word coming out of her mouth was being compared to digital evidence that would soon destroy her credibility completely. "Belligerent," Judge Judy repeated, her voice flat and dangerous. "Mr. Washington, a decorated Army veteran who served 2 tours in Afghanistan, became belligerent because you wouldn't exchange a defective laptop?" "Your Honor," Sandra replied with that familiar retail manager smirk, "military service doesn't give someone the right to abuse retail workers. I've dealt with entitled customers for over 20 years, and I know the signs. Mr. Washington came in with an agenda, and when I didn't give him what he wanted, he tried to intimidate me with his size and his voice." The accusation hung in the air like toxic gas. Sandra had just accused a respected veteran and father of using physical intimidation against a woman half his size, all because he wanted to return a broken laptop. The gallery shifted uncomfortably, sensing that Sandra had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Marcus's jaw tightened, but his military training kept him composed even as his character was being assassinated on national television. Judge Judy's expression had shifted from professional interest to barely contained fury. Her research team had provided her with Sandra's employment history, and she knew this wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern, a career built on crushing people who couldn't fight back. But Marcus Washington had chosen to fight back, and Sandra was about to learn that some people don't back down when bullied. "Ms. Mitchell," Judge Judy said, her voice dropping to that dangerous whisper that veteran court watchers knew meant someone was about to be eviscerated. "You're telling me that a father of 3, with no criminal record and a spotless military service record, drove 45 minutes to your store with his children just to intimidate you over a laptop return?" Sandra's confidence never wavered. "Your Honor, you'd be amazed what some people will do when they think they can get something for free." It was the wrong answer. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed to laser points, and everyone in that courtroom knew that Sandra Mitchell had just signed her own death warrant. Judge Judy's fingers drummed once against her desk, a sound that echoed through the courtroom like a countdown timer. 25 years of dispensing justice had taught her to recognize the exact moment when someone's arrogance would become their downfall. And Sandra Mitchell had just crossed that invisible line. The veteran judge leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension with surgical precision. "Ms. Mitchell, let me be very clear about something," Judge Judy began, her tone carrying the weight of absolute authority. "In my courtroom, we deal in facts, not fiction. We respect evidence, not attitude. And we treat people with dignity, regardless of their background or the color of their skin. Do you understand me?" The warning was crystal clear, delivered with the kind of finality that had made Judge Judy a legend. The gallery held its breath, cameras zoomed in on Sandra's face, and even the bailiff straightened his posture. This wasn't just judicial guidance. It was a final opportunity for Sandra to recognize the precipice she was standing on and step back from the edge. But Sandra Mitchell had spent 2 decades believing her own hype. Convinced that her middle management authority made her untouchable, instead of heeding the warning, she actually chuckled, a short, dismissive laugh that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Her perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively as she leaned back in her chair, with the confidence of someone who had never truly faced consequences. "Your Honor, I appreciate the lecture, but I've been managing retail operations since before some of these people were born," Sandra said, her voice dripping with condescension as her eyes swept over Marcus and his family. "I know how to handle difficult customers, and I know when someone is trying to take advantage of company policies. This isn't about dignity or respect. It's about following procedures and not letting people walk all over you." The courtroom erupted in barely audible gasps. Sandra had just dismissed Judge Judy's warning, with the casual arrogance of someone who believed herself above accountability. Her smirk widened as she glanced toward the gallery, completely misreading the horror on their faces as vindication of her position. She actually straightened her blazer and adjusted her posture, as if preparing to receive applause for her boldness. Judge Judy's expression transformed in real time, shifting from stern warning to barely contained volcanic fury. Her eyes narrowed to dangerous slits, and the temperature in the courtroom seemed to drop 10 degrees. The veteran producers in the control room later said they'd never seen Judge Judy's face quite like that. A mixture of professional outrage and personal offense that promised devastation for anyone stupid enough to have triggered it. "I see," Judge Judy said quietly, her voice now carrying the deadly calm that preceded total destruction. "You think you can dismiss my warnings and lecture me about procedures in my own courtroom?" The countdown had begun. 47 seconds earlier, Sandra Mitchell had been a confident retail manager who believed she could manipulate any situation to her advantage. Now she had exactly 47 seconds before discovering that some people don't just demand respect, they enforce it with the full weight of justice. Evidence and 25 years of experience destroying arrogant people who mistake patience for weakness. Sandra's smirk faltered for just a moment as she registered something dangerous in Judge Judy's tone, but her arrogance wouldn't let her retreat. She had no idea that she had just triggered the most spectacular courtroom destruction in television history. What happened next would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform, becoming the gold standard for instant karma, and the moment Sandra Mitchell's life changed forever. Judge Judy's voice exploded through the courtroom with the force of a Category 5 hurricane, each word precisely aimed and devastatingly effective. "Ms. Mitchell, you have some nerve," Judge Judy roared, her legendary voice filling every corner of the courtroom. "You sit in my courtroom, dismiss my warnings, and have the unmitigated gall to lecture me about procedures while lying through your teeth about a decorated veteran." Sandra's smirk vanished instantly, replaced by wide-eyed shock as the full force of Judge Judy's fury crashed over her like a tidal wave. The confident retail manager who had dismissed judicial warnings 30 seconds earlier was now shrinking back in her chair, her face pale and her hands trembling as she realized she had awakened something she couldn't control. "Bailiff, roll the security footage from Tech World Electronics. Timestamp 2:47 p.m., Judge Judy commanded, her voice crackling with authority. The large screen in the courtroom flickered to life, and Sandra's face went from pale to ghostly white as she watched herself on camera. The footage showed her approaching Marcus Washington and his children with visible aggression, her body language hostile from the very first moment. "Watch carefully, Ms. Mitchell," Judge Judy continued, her voice now a controlled burn that was somehow more terrifying than her initial explosion. "Because America is about to see exactly what kind of person you really are." The security footage was damning beyond anything Sandra could have imagined. Clear audio captured her telling Marcus that, "People like you always try to scam the system," her voice dripping with racist implications that made the gallery gasp audibly. The video showed her deliberately examining the laptop for less than 10 seconds before declaring it user damaged, then calling security when Marcus politely asked for corporate's phone number. Sandra's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. The woman who had been lecturing Judge Judy about procedures was now watching herself violate every customer service protocol in existence. Her confident posture collapsed as she slumped in her chair, finally understanding that she wasn't dealing with another customer she could bully into submission. "Your Honor, that's not—" "The video doesn't show the full context," Sandra stammered, her voice now small and desperate, a far cry from the condescending tone she'd used just moments earlier. Judge Judy's eyes blazed with righteous fury. "Oh, we're just getting started, Ms. Mitchell. That was just day one. I have footage from 4 separate incidents, 17 customer complaints, and a corporate investigation that will make your head spin." Sandra Mitchell was no longer smirking. She was beginning to beg. The second security footage began playing, and Sandra Mitchell's world completely imploded. This video was from 3 months earlier, showing Sandra screaming at an elderly Hispanic woman who was trying to return a birthday gift without a receipt. The audio was crystal clear as Sandra's voice cut through the store like a knife. "Learn English or shop somewhere else. This is America!" "Oh my God," someone whispered from the gallery, and Sandra's face turned a sickly shade of green as she watched her own bigotry broadcast to millions of viewers. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably now, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time as Judge Judy systematically destroyed every lie she had told. "Your Honor, please, that was taken out of context," Sandra pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. "I was having a bad day. I was under stress from corporate pressure." "Silence!" Judge Judy's voice thundered through the courtroom with such force that Sandra actually flinched. "You don't get to make excuses for racism, Ms. Mitchell. You don't get to blame stress for treating people like garbage because of the color of their skin or their accent." The third video was even worse. Sandra was shown deliberately damaging a returned item, scratching it with her keys when she thought no one was looking, then claiming the customer had damaged it themselves. The timestamp showed this happened just 6 weeks ago, part of a pattern so systematic it could only be described as criminal fraud. Sandra was openly crying now, mascara running down her cheeks as 20 years of buried consequences crashed down on her simultaneously. "Please, Your Honor, I have a family, I have bills. I can't lose my job over this," she sobbed, her professional composure completely shattered. "You should have thought about your family before you decided to become a professional bigot," Judge Judy shot back, her voice filled with disgust. "And guess what, Ms. Mitchell? Your job is the least of your problems right now." Judge Judy held up a thick folder that made Sandra's eyes widen in terror. "Corporate headquarters sent me your complete employment file. 43 formal complaints in 5 years, all mysteriously buried by management. 7 discrimination lawsuits settled quietly out of court. And here's the best part, your own assistant manager's statement describing how you bragged about making customers cry for entertainment." Sandra's sobs turned into full-blown hyperventilation as she realized the scope of evidence against her. The woman who had laughed at Judge Judy's warning was now begging for mercy that wasn't coming. Her carefully curated image as a professional retail manager had been replaced by the reality of a serial abuser, whose victims finally had a voice. "I'm sorry," Sandra wailed, her voice echoing off the courtroom walls. "I'm so sorry. Please, I'll change, I'll do better, I'll apologize to everyone." Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes boring into Sandra's soul. "Sorry doesn't undo 2 decades of making people feel less than human. Sorry doesn't erase the trauma you've caused innocent families. And sorry certainly doesn't get you out of what's coming next." The courtroom held its breath as Judge Judy prepared to deliver the final blow that would end Sandra Mitchell's reign of retail terror forever. Judge Judy's gavel rose like an executioner's axe, and when it struck the bench, it sealed Sandra Mitchell's fate with biblical finality. "I find in favor of the plaintiff, Marcus Washington, in the amount of $5,000 for pain, suffering, and humiliation," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of absolute justice. "But more importantly, I'm forwarding all evidence to the district attorney's office for potential criminal fraud charges." Sandra's face went completely white as the words sank in. Criminal charges meant more than losing her job. It meant possible jail time, a permanent criminal record, and the destruction of everything she'd built over 20 years of retail management. "Furthermore," Judge Judy continued, her voice now ice cold, "I'm sending copies of all 17 complaints and 4 security videos to every major retail chain in the tri-state area. Your career terrorizing innocent customers is over, Ms. Mitchell." The courtroom erupted in applause as Marcus Washington's vindication became complete. Sandra sat motionless, tears streaming down her face as she realized her life as she knew it was finished. Within hours, the footage would go viral with over 10 million views, making her the most infamous Karen in internet history. Corporate headquarters had already terminated her employment before the show finished taping. This is just the beginning of Karen's complete downfall. Smash that like button if you think she got exactly what she deserved, and keep watching because Judge Judy isn't done destroying her yet. The aftermath of Sandra Mitchell's courtroom destruction became the stuff of internet legend. Within 24 hours, Just Karen vs. Judge Judy had generated over 50 million views across all platforms, making Sandra the poster child for entitled retail managers everywhere. Her mugshot appeared on every major news outlet when the district attorney filed criminal fraud charges. And employment lawyers used her case as a textbook example of workplace discrimination. Marcus Washington became a hero overnight, receiving job offers from major corporations who wanted to associate with his dignity and grace under pressure. His daughter Jasmine received a full scholarship from a tech company inspired by her father's courage to stand up to institutional racism. Sandra's life crumbled completely. Unemployable in retail, facing criminal charges, and forever immortalized as the Karen who laughed at Judge Judy's warning, she became a cautionary tale about the price of unchecked arrogance. Her apartment lease was terminated, her car repossessed, and her social media accounts deleted after receiving thousands of angry messages. Judge Judy's masterful destruction of Sandra Mitchell proved that justice isn't just blind, sometimes it has perfect vision and a photographic memory. The lesson was clear. Treat people with respect, because you never know when karma will show up with cameras rolling and evidence in hand. What did you think of Judge Judy's epic takedown of this retail Karen? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you loved watching justice get served, subscribe for more incredible courtroom moments. Also check out this next video where another entitled person learns why you should never mess with Judge Judy. The ending will leave you speechless.